My name's Russell, and like we said, I run thepresenter.com. Really passionate about everything Prezi, sharing ideas, and it's fantastic to see so many people gathered in one place who are also as enthusiastic as I am. So I have to be careful to fit this in 20 minutes because I could talk to you all day long about Prezi. But I want to focus on this important subject. How do we avoid death by Prezi? So you should have some handouts at the moment. Have you got those? Just waving around. Yeah, do you know what they are? Yeah, aeroplane sick bags, yeah. I give them out to everyone in my training sessions just as a reminder what they want to try and avoid. No one has ever had to use them yet, but one of my objectives for this presentation is to try and make one of you sick. So I'm sorry in advance if that's you, okay? And also there may not be enough for everyone, so you might have to share. So 2 people may have to throw up into one bag. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's get started. I mean, the aeroplane sick bags are actually quite a good kind of icon of what I want to talk about, because you would find those on an aeroplane, and giving a presentation is like flying a plane. So just for the next 20 minutes, let's imagine that I'm your pilot, you're my passengers, and I would like to give you a very important safety briefing about this flight. So fasten your seatbelts. Please put all your devices into flight mode. You don't have to do that, it's fine. Okay, and I'll try and give you as smooth a ride as possible. Now this screen isn't working, so I may have to be unprofessional and keep turning around to see where I am. But hands up if you've experienced death by Prezi. Has anyone experienced death by Prezi? Yeah? Not everyone, okay. For those who haven't, sit tightly because you're about to. So the beauty of Prezi is that we can move in any direction. We can move over to the left and zoom in. We can come back. We can move over to the right. We can come back. We can also rotate and we can zoom in on fine details at any time. We can spin the canvas around in a clockwise direction and come back, then in the anti-clockwise direction. And we can just keep doing this as much as we like. And some people think this is what Prezi is all about. Well, actually, they're very wrong. Okay? And this could go on and on and on for the entire 20 minutes of my presentation. And maybe someone in the audience would actually be sick. We'll see. Okay? I think you get the point I'm trying to make here. It will stop in a second, I promise you. This is just temporary turbulence in our flight, okay? So, what we don't want to do is exactly what you've just seen, because this will happen. As we just heard, this can happen, okay? We really don't want to make women, children, men sick on our presentations. This is actually death by Prezi. And I really want to share with you my hints and tips on how to avoid it, because far too many people see Prezi for the first time and think that the spinning and the zooming is what it's all about, and they should add as much of it as possible, mainly because they also think that lots of animation in PowerPoint is a good thing. Okay, they've got it very wrong. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that by giving you some tips. But the first thing to realize is, why does it happen? Well, it's the same reason why anyone who, as a small boy or girl, dreams of being a pilot one day, when they don't really know how to fly a plane, but they just think it would be a cool job, they dream about getting behind or getting into the cockpit of a plane, taking off, performing all sorts of ridiculous aerial maneuvers, taking their audience on a thrill ride, because that will excite them, okay? But they need to stop, because the reality is very different. It's a shame. There is sound to this. It's much better with people screaming. So if you want to scream right now, feel free to. But this is the reality, okay? This is just a video I took from a movie. But it's very similar to how people can feel sometimes in the audience of a death by Prezi presentation. It's quite scary, isn't it? It's quite morbid. Why are you laughing? Those people could be seriously hurt. Okay, this is not good. You shouldn't laugh. Shame on you. Okay, but this is what we want to avoid. It's very, very similar, except no one will actually die. That's probably the only difference. Now, as one of the 29 million Prezi users, and as one of the official experts of Prezi as well, I feel a real responsibility to make sure that every single presentation I deliver in Prezi makes people come away saying, I'm never going to use PowerPoint or Keynote again. Prezi is fantastic. That's what I have to be using to present with. If I don't do that, if I deliver Death by Prezi, I really have to face the consequences, okay? And those consequences might be that if we injure people, they sue our asses, for a start. But people, as we've said, will feel motion sick. They will have a bad experience. Now, this is, in my eyes, this cannot happen. Anyone who sees a Prezi for the first time and comes away saying, I'm going to stick to PowerPoint, that's a bad day. Okay, that should never, ever happen. They're probably going to decide from that point onwards as well never to fly with Prezi Airways ever again because it's too dangerous. Okay, and the worst thing that could happen, which would really upset me, is that they might go back to really old-fashioned methods of flying. Okay, I don't want to point the finger at any particular tool, but the clue is on the screen. Okay, so we really, really do not want people to experience Prezi for the first time, have a bad experience, and then go back to using something like slide-based presenting. Okay, so how do we actually do that? How are we going to avoid that? Because it is difficult. It is difficult to avoid. But this is how I avoid it. So, if we just take a closer look in the cockpit of our plane here. Now, a pilot who flies a plane would never wait until the day of his flight to get on board the plane and then ask his co-pilot, where are we going today? And then the co-pilot would never ask, I don't know, I thought you knew where we were going. Okay, that would never, ever happen. If it did, then the passengers on that plane would have a really uncomfortable ride, a negative experience, and they would probably get to their destination a few hours later than they were hoping to. Okay, they wouldn't get to the point as quickly and as smoothly as they should. So the point I'm trying to make here is a really, really important one that, in my experience, people forget about quite a lot. And that's, what is your objective? I said destination. Obviously, what is your objective? I deal with so many business people, especially high-level business people, who have no idea what the objective of the presentation is. Why are they using visuals? What are those visuals for? But it's absolutely crucial, not just in Prezi, in any presentation. Even if you have no slides or no script presentation, you have to know what your objective is. That's absolutely crucial. Because if you don't know that, then your audience is never going to get to the point of what you're trying to get across. Okay? So my objectives for this presentation were really clear to me at the start, and I wrote these down on a piece of paper before I did anything. So give the audience an example of Death by Prezi. I think I did that. Help them realize why Death by Prezi happens, and also explain how to plan a Prezi in the right way to completely avoid it. And there was a secret objective to make someone throw up. I don't think I've succeeded in that one though just yet. But keep those sick bags and take them with you to Prezi presentations. You may need them in the future. Okay? Now, once you know what your objective is, once you know what your destination is that you're taking your audience members to, you need to figure out the quickest and the smoothest route to that destination. There's no point talking about something for an hour just because you can use more Prezi and show them more spinning, more zooming. If you can get to the point much quicker, then do that, okay? The message, the objective is more important than making people spin and zoom all over the place. So how do we get to that objective in a really smooth way? Well, there's been lots of talk today and lots of examples of mind mapping, and this is exactly how I get to my objective. Audience there as well, okay? So by using mind mapping, I put my objective in the center of a page. I then branch out into the different areas that I need to cover in that presentation. And then I take it even further, as we've seen with the mind map being created today, into more and more detail on each of those. Now that gives me a roadmap, or I suppose I should say a flight path, that I can use to actually take my audience directly to my objective. I can figure out the order in which I need to go through things, and I can also figure out how everything is going to kind of hang and be glued together. Okay? So really, really important that you spend time planning your Prezi, figuring out your objective, and in my experience, mind mapping is the best way to do that. If you don't use mind mapping yet, I suggest you really start. It's a really powerful tool. So, rule number 1 of Prezi Flight School is always have a plan your flight path, okay, and always know your destination. Know where you want to get your audience to, because they're the most important thing, not your visuals. The audience is the most important thing. Okay, now this is my mind map that I created for this presentation. So if I just zoom in here, really, really rough. It took me 25, maybe 30 minutes to do, just pen, paper, nothing else. Started in the center, branched out, and I had no idea at all at this stage that my presentation would be about flight, or I would hand out sick bags or anything like that. I just knew the content that I needed to cover. Now, if I highlight some of the things on here, so I've just circled the aeroplane there, you can see some of the words are becoming highlighted. These are the words that enabled my brain to come up with the idea of flight for the theme of this presentation, because there are similarities between motion sickness in Prezi and also feeling sick in an airplane. Okay? So that's how I came up with the idea for my big picture. And my big picture is the flight safety card that we saw at the very beginning. That's where everything in my presentation is stored, and I never ever need to go outside of that. Okay? And this is something I want to talk about as well. This is another danger with Prezi, is that because you have so much freedom, people think that you have to use it. So you have to use the entire canvas and spread everything out far and wide. But actually, your Prezis will be much, much better if you give yourself boundaries. So these are my boundaries. This is my big picture. Everything is inside here. If I wanted to, I could go outside of that. But that's what I would call the no-fly zone. Okay? Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. And I warn you, if you do, you may come across some really nasty characters, okay, that are just intent on shooting you down. Okay? We don't want that to happen either, of course. Again, much better with the sound on that. Had to get a Star Wars reference in there somewhere. Okay, so know what your destination is, your objective, figure out the smoothest way to get there, plan it with mind mapping, but then, of course, you need to build the Prezi. So there's been a lot of talk today about creativity. Do you need to be creative to make a good Prezi? I honestly believe the answer is no, but what you do need to do is approach your design in a logical way. So the way that I build Prezis is I think of cake. I normally think of cake most of the day anyway. When you have a cake like the one on screen, the very bottom layer of sponge has to be there. And for me, that's my background image. So the very first thing I added to this presentation was the background image of my safety card, which is essentially just a blue box with lots of other boxes inside. Okay? Now the really tasty bits, the cream and the jam of my Prezi cake, is actually the content. So I then go into that background image and I add my content. So that's my video, my text, the images of the aeroplanes that you've seen. That's my cream and my jam. The last thing I need to do, of course, on top, my last layer of my Prezi cake, is my frames and my path, so that I can actually get my presentation to flow in a nice, logical, smooth way. Okay, and that's how I build every single Prezi. That's how I teach people to build Prezis, especially if they're new to the software. It helps you keep control of what you're doing. In something like PowerPoint, we are being controlled because we cannot go outside of a slide. Now that we can go outside of slides, there are no slides. There's no control. There's too much freedom. What do we do with it? Sometimes people panic and they create death by Prezi. So by setting your own boundaries, you can really avoid that. Okay? So I'm not sure how much time I have left. 5 minutes. That's good. I thought I was going to be here for much longer because I do like the sound of my own voice. But just to summarize the presentation, the message is really, really simple, but I'm just lucky enough that I got to give you a nice visual demonstration of, how to avoid death by Prezi. Essentially, the key is always plan. Never, ever just know that you have to present on Friday, open up Prezi on Friday morning, and start throwing content on, okay? You might be able to get away with that in something like PowerPoint because you are restricted to it. But in Prezi, with all that freedom, if you just start throwing things on at the last minute, you will end up with death by Prezi. Okay? So always have a plan, always know your destination, know exactly where you're going, and give your passengers, your audience, as smooth a ride as possible. Okay? And try to use the big picture technique. I think no matter what your presentation subject, you will have some kind of big picture, some kind of visual that will tie everything together that you can then use to hide content inside of, zoom into and zoom back out to show that big picture, okay? I've never come across a situation yet where someone has said, this is my subject, what do I need to build? What would be a good picture? There will always be something. And it will always come from a really good mind map. Okay? Of course, beware of the no-fly zone. We definitely do not want to be shot down by Darth Vader or any of the horrible characters outside of there. But the main message that I want to get across to you all really today is we are all part of the 29 million Prezi users, which sounds a lot. It is a lot. But actually, in terms of how many presentations get made every single day in the entire world, we are actually a very small community right now. So we have a responsibility to make every Prezi experience memorable, engaging, and more importantly, fun. It has to be fun because, let's face it, presentations have not been fun for a long, long time. But with Prezi, they really can be. Okay? So that's me. Any questions, of course, I'm sure we will cover.
Big hand for Russell Anderson.
Thank you very much.